Imagine waking up and, like, before your feet even hit the floor, you've already spent 2 hours working this highly demanding, utterly unpaid job.
Oh, yeah. The morning doom scroll.
Right? Your heart rate is elevated, your cortisol levels have spiked, and you've produced absolutely nothing of value. I mean, you haven't even brushed your teeth yet.
No, but your brain has already processed a whole daily quota of, you know, political outrage, meticulously curated social envy, and a dozen hyper-urgent logistical demands. Welcome to the modern morning.
It's terrifying when you phrase it that way, but today we're doing a deep dive into what actually happens when you pull the plug on all of that.
It is a brutal visualization to start with that morning routine,
Yeah.
but from a neurobiological standpoint, it's entirely accurate.
Yeah.
We have this collective tendency to view the smartphone as a neutral portal, like a simple pane of glass we look through to see the world. But functionally, it operates much more like a behavioral modification syringe.
Wow. A syringe?
Yeah, because it actively alters the neurochemistry of the user from the literal moment they open their eyes.
And that's our mission for today's deep dive. We are entirely focused on what happens to a modern human brain and a modern life when you pull that syringe right out of your arm for 30 days.
It's a fascinating experiment.
It really is. So the source material we are dissecting today is this incredibly vulnerable YouTube video diary by a creator named Maher Ashraf. It's titled 30 Days Without a Phone.
And we're going to explore the cascading effects on the human nervous system here. The unexpected restoration of cognitive bandwidth, and just the sheer friction of trying to exist as an analog human in a digitally mandated world.
Absolutely. But before we look at day one of his experiment, we really have to establish his ground rules. Because, Marr didn't just throw all his electronics into the sea and retreat to a cave.
No, no. And that constraint is actually what makes this particular experiment so valuable, I think.
How
Well, he swaps his smartphone SIM card into an old-school button phone, a dumb phone.
Yeah.
He actually notes that he hasn't used a device like this in 10 years. But he explicitly retains access to a tablet and a laptop.
Okay, I have to challenge that methodology right out of the gate. Because to a lot of you listening, dropping the phone but keeping the iPad sounds like a massive loophole.
I can see why people would think that, yeah.
Right, like, isn't a screen just a screen? Why draw this arbitrary line in the sand where a laptop is fine but an iPhone isn't?
It seems like a contradiction until you really look at the architecture of user interfaces.
Okay, break that down for me.
So, the goal of this specific detox is not the total eradication of pixels from his visual field. It's not about becoming a total Luddite. It is the eradication of uncontrolled consumption.
Uncontrolled consumption.
Yes, a smartphone's UI is fundamentally designed to remove all friction between the user and infinite variable rewards. The infinite scroll, the pull to refresh mechanism, the pervasive red notification badges. These are all engineered to create a loop of continuous, aimless engagement.
Whereas a laptop requires a different posture, both physically and mentally.
Precisely. The laptop is primarily a tool of intentional production. I mean, you generally approach a laptop with a specific task in mind, right?
Right, like writing an email or, editing a video, formatting a spreadsheet.
Exactly. The friction required to accidentally lose 3 hours on a laptop is significantly higher than on a smartphone. By isolating his toolset to devices that promote singular intentional purposes, Maher is attempting to surgically excise the parasitic consumption.
While still keeping his job, basically.
Right, preserving his ability to function in a modern economy.
Okay, that makes sense. So that brings us to his starting baseline, which we really need to quantify to understand the shock his system is about to endure.
The baseline is wild.
It's insane. Prior to this experiment, Maher admits to a 9-year addiction. Since his first year of high school, his baseline screen time on workdays was 3 to 4 hours, which is a lot.
It's a massive amount of time.
But on his days off, that number jumped to between 5 and 9 hours.
9 hours of active screen engagement. Just let that sink in.
I mean, okay, let's unpack this for the listener. Think about the sheer scale of that number. 9 hours is longer than a standard workday. It's longer than a full night's sleep. It's like working a full-time unpaid job as a professional scroller.
It is.
What is the brain actually doing when it spends 9 hours locked onto that variable reward schedule? Like physically, what's happening?
It is running a physiological marathon on a treadmill. Every single time you scroll past a new image, read a controversial headline, receive a text message, your brain releases a microdose of dopamine.
And dopamine is the reward chemical, right?
Well, actually, no, that's a common misconception. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical, it is the molecule of motivation and craving. It drives you to seek the next reward.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when you subject your dopaminergic system to a 9-hour barrage of artificial stimulation, you drastically raise your baseline threshold for engagement.
Meaning normal, analog life starts to feel unbearably dull in comparison.
Yes. The baseline becomes so elevated that reading a book, staring out a window, or even just having a slow conversation feels agonizingly understimulating.
Because the brain is used to fireworks.
Exactly. The brain is essentially screaming, there isn't enough data here. Where is the novelty? So when Mars suddenly unplugs that fire hose on day one, the biological withdrawal is immediate.
Yeah.
And it's very visceral.
We see that play out the very first morning. I mean, day one begins, and the very first action he takes is entirely involuntary.
The hand search.
Yes, he wakes up, and his hand instinctively starts patting down the bed sheets, searching for the physical chassis of the phone.
The phantom limb phenomenon. It's classic.
It's so eerie to read about. He doesn't decide to look for the phone. His hand just goes hunting for it before his conscious mind is even fully online. How does a piece of consumer electronics embed itself that deeply into our motor reflexes?
To understand that, you have to look at how the brain maps the body. The somatosensory cortex maintains a map of your physical boundaries, where your arm ends, where your fingers are in space. When you hold an object constantly for 9 years, especially a highly interactive tool, the brain begins to incorporate that object into your body schema. The phone literally becomes a neurological extension of the hand.
So when his hand searches the bed, it's not just looking for a tool, it's looking for a missing piece of its own mapped anatomy.
Exactly. And this is where the paralysis of the modern morning begins. Marr explains that previously he would wake up around noon, but remain physically trapped under the blankets, just scrolling until 1:30 or 2:00 p.m.
Up to 2 hours completely vaporized.
Vaporized before he even moves.
I really want to dig into this paralysis because I know for a fact that you, the listener, have probably experienced this. I've experienced it. You wake up, you tell yourself you're just going to check the weather, and suddenly 45 minutes have vanished and you haven't moved an inch.
It's the trap.
Why does the screen trap us in bed? I mean, people have always stayed in bed reading newspapers or like watching morning television. Why is the smartphone uniquely paralyzing?
It has to do with a very vulnerable cognitive state called sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you first wake up, your brain waves are transitioning from the slow delta and theta waves of deep sleep into the faster alpha and beta waves of wakeful alertness.
So you're basically booting up.
Exactly. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for executive function, planning, and impulse control, is essentially booting up. It is not fully online yet.
So the defense shields are down.
They are completely down. Now, compare reading a physical newspaper to scrolling a social feed during this vulnerable window. A newspaper is static. It does not ping you with notifications.
Right.
It doesn't present a customized algorithmic feed designed to trigger your specific threat detection centers. When you flood a booting brain with hyperstimulating, rapidly changing novel information,
Yeah.
a mixture of global tragedies, personal messages, and entertainment, you completely overwhelm the cognitive processing capacity.
The system just crashes.
It defaults to the path of least metabolic resistance. The brain decides it cannot process this massive influx of data while also coordinating the physical effort of standing up, walking to the bathroom, and making breakfast.
Wow. So it forces you to stay still.
It freezes the body to dedicate all available resources to processing the digital threat and reward simulation in your hand. You become physically immobile but cognitively hyperactive.
That makes so much sense. But on day one of his experiment, that paralysis is broken. Because the phone isn't there, the trap doesn't snap shut.
Well,
Hart gets up immediately. He goes to the bathroom, freshens up, and brushes his teeth. He makes breakfast. He brews a cup of mango tea, which sounds amazing.
highly specific detail, yeah.
Yeah, and he sits down and actually takes notes on a 1-hour educational lecture. He even leaves his apartment, which, as a wide side note in his video, he mentions have been robbed twice recently, so he goes to check on things.
Yeah, he just drops that detail in there.
Right, but he does all of this before the time he would normally have even swung his legs over the edge of the mattress.
The sheer velocity of the life reclaimed here is astounding. I mean, he even uses a German phrase in the video, Es gibt noch Hoffnung. There is still hope.
There is still hope.
Yes, he's recognizing that the morning can actually belong to him again.
But, the most profound shift isn't just the logistical reclaiming of time, it's the emotional regulation.
Oh, absolutely.
On the second day of the experiment, we get this perfect case study in how the smartphone dictates our baseline mood. So Mara works a rotational schedule, right?
Mhm.
The shifts vary wildly from like 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. starts.
Right.
Because of this unpredictability, his mother hadn't prepared food for him before his shift.
A very standard, low-stakes domestic miscommunication.
Exactly, nothing major. But Mar is brutally honest about his previous baseline. He admits that normally, in that exact scenario, he would react aggressively. He would feel anxious, suffocated, and he would lash out at his mom. But on day 2, without the phone, he simply looks at his mother and says, "No problem, there is still time."
And she is utterly baffled.
She doesn't recognize this calm, measured response from her own son.
Because it's completely out of character for his digital baseline. This is a textbook demonstration of the HPA axis in action.
The HPA axis.
The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's the system that regulates our stress response. When you wake up, your body naturally initiates a cortisol awakening response. It's a natural, healthy spike in cortisol designed to get you moving and alert.
Okay.
But when you immediately look at a smartphone, you hijack that natural spike.
You push it over the edge into a chronic stress response.
Yes, you're instantly exposed to demands, alerts, global anxieties. Your brain perceives these digital inputs as literal environmental threats.
Wow.
This shifts your autonomic nervous system away from the parasympathetic rest and digest mode and locks it right into the sympathetic fight or flight mode.
So by the time he walks into the kitchen on a normal day, he isn't just a guy looking for breakfast. Biologically speaking, he is a cornered animal anticipating an attack.
That is the biological reality of it, yeah. Think about it. If you are already operating at 95% of your stress capacity because you've just spent an hour doom scrolling, a minor inconvenience like missing food pushes you to 100% and you snap. You snap. You become aggressive. By removing the phone, Mar protected his morning neurochemistry. He allowed his nervous system to boot up naturally, leaving him with the actual emotional bandwidth to simply say, "No problem, there is still time."
It's a beautiful moment of reclaimed agency. Just being nice to your mom because you aren't chemically stressed. But, of course, the honeymoon phase of simply enjoying mango tea and feeling calm doesn't last forever.
No, withdrawal is real.
The biological reality of a 9-year addiction eventually catches up, and the narrative hits a profound psychological wall around day 3.
The illusion of connection shatters.
It really does. By the 3rd day, Mar hits this wall and feels intensely, painfully isolated. He realizes he isn't actually talking to anyone. He posts his work to his Telegram channel on his laptop, and he closes it. He's alone in a room, and the silence is deafening. He uses this phrase, the fake social life, to describe what the phone had been providing.
And what's fascinating here is we really need to examine what fake means in this context.
Let me push back on that word for a second. If I am using WhatsApp to text my cousin on the other side of the world, or if I am commenting on a real friend's photo, is that really a fake interaction? Doesn't the utility of the tool depend on how the user deploys it?
It is a fair counter-argument, and certainly high-bandwidth, synchronous communication like a long phone call or a dedicated FaceTime session carries genuine social nutrition.
Right.
But that is rarely the bulk of our screen time. The fake social life Maher is referring to is the ambient, asynchronous, algorithmic simulation of a tribe.
The passive scrolling, the likes.
Yes. You see, for hundreds of thousands of years, the human brain evolved to equate social inclusion with physical survival. To be isolated from the tribe out on the savannah meant death. So our brains developed an incredibly sensitive radar for social cues, rewarding us with dopamine when we feel seen, validated, and acknowledged. Social media platforms completely hijacked this survival mechanism.
They figured out how to synthetically trigger the tribe radar.
Exactly. I view it as a cognitive autoimmune response.
Oh, that's interesting.
Your brain aggressively responds to what it misidentifies as vital social stimuli. The notification badges, the likes, the read receipts. It feels like you are interacting with a vibrant community. But because there is no actual human presence, no physical proximity, no pheromones, no micro-expressions, no real-time eye contact, the system is fundamentally starved of actual connection.
So it's an analogy time. To the listener, it's like eating junk food when you're starving, right? It
Oh,
fills your stomach up so you don't feel the hunger pangs, but it offers absolutely zero actual nutrition.
that's a perfect analogy.
The phone tricks your brain into thinking you are surrounded by a tribe, masking your true isolation. So when Ma removed the phone, he wasn't suddenly more alone than he was on day -1.
He was exactly as alone.
He was just finally forced to feel the isolation he was already living in.
Confronting that silence is the most painful part of the withdrawal process. But once he pushes through that wall, once the brain stops panicking about the missing tribe, something remarkable happens to his cognition. We see the return of deep focus.
This is where the sheer physics of his day change. Maher makes an observation that sounds absurdly simple, but it completely stopped me in my tracks.
The video duration.
Yes. He realizes that without his phone, a 1-hour video actually takes 1 hour to watch.
Which highlights how distorted our perception of time and task completion has become.
He confesses to the viewers that previously, a 1-hour educational video would drag out into a 5-hour ordeal.
5 hours for 1 hour of content.
5 hours, because he would press play. A few minutes in, he'd pause to check a WhatsApp message. While on WhatsApp, he'd see a notification. Then he'd switch over to YouTube on his phone, watch a short, get a messenger ping, and then end up scrolling Facebook.
The classic doom loop.
5 hours later, the original lecture is still sitting there, unfinished. He brilliantly calls this the wheel of continuous forgetfulness.
The wheel of continuous forgetfulness. It is a beautiful, poetic phrase for a very devastating neurological reality. We call it attention residue.
What exactly is attention residue? Because I know listeners right now are probably listening to us while simultaneously checking an email or swiping through a feed. What is happening in their brains right now?
Well, the core misunderstanding we have about our brains is the belief that we can multitask.
Which we can't.
We absolutely cannot. The human brain is capable of rapid task switching, but it cannot process two complex cognitive streams simultaneously. Every single time you switch your attention from one context to another, say, from an educational lecture to a text message, your brain pays a metabolic tax.
It takes energy to change lanes.
Yes. And worse, the lane change is never clean. When you look away from the lecture to read the text message, a portion of your cognitive processing power is left behind, still thinking about the lecture.
Oh.
That is the attention residue. And then when you switch back to the lecture, your brain is still partially chewing on the social dynamics of the text message. With every single pivot, your working memory degrades.
So you aren't just wasting time. You are actively lowering your IQ in that moment. You are making yourself dumber with every context switch.
Precisely. You enter a state of continuous low-grade cognitive failure. You open the phone to check the weather. You see a red notification dot. Your amygdala spikes. You click it. You read a comment. You switch apps to verify a fact. And 20 minutes later, you lock the screen, having completely forgotten why you picked up the device in the first place.
The wheel of continuous forgetfulness.
Exactly.
And when Mar steps off that wheel, the micro details of his life snap back into focus. He points out this funny, highly relatable detail. He finally started taking his creatine supplement consistently.
It's the little things.
Previously, he'd remember sporadically, get distracted, and completely forget to take it. But with his working memory intact, tiny logistical details of self-care get scheduled and actually accomplished. He can hold a thought in his head without it being immediately overwritten by a digital interruption.
Which naturally leads him to look up from his own experience and begin observing the society around him. Because once you regain your focus, you start to see the distraction in others very, very clearly.
And what he observes is a generational contagion.
Yes.
Because we tend to frame smartphone addiction as a youth issue, right? Like Gen Z. We picture teenagers glued to TikTok. But Maher's observations out in the physical world violently dismantle that assumption.
The interface of a smartphone does not discriminate by age. It hacks the underlying hardware of the human nervous system, which is fundamentally identical across generations.
The story he tells about the 79-year-old father is chilling.
It's a sad story.
Maher is in the darky area after work, sharing a ride with a 51-year-old man. The man sees Maher using his old-school button phone and asks about it. When Maher explains his 30-day experiment, the 51-year-old shares what happened to his own elderly father.
Right.
The family had bought the 79-year-old patriarch a smartphone a year prior, thinking it would be a nice way for him to, quote, pass the time.
The seemingly benign, even generous, technological intervention from the family.
Right. Let's give Grandpa a way to watch videos. But the result was a psychological catastrophe. The son explains that the 79-year-old man, a man whose personality and nervous system had been solidified over nearly 8 decades of analog living, completely changed.
Fundamentally altered.
He became incredibly nervous. He began rushing through his daily activities, rushing through his chores, even hurrying through his meals. He developed a highly irritable, anxious disposition.
This completely upends the narrative that older generations are somehow immune to digital capture just because they grew up without it.
I have to ask you about the mechanism here. How does a piece of glass induce a state of constant urgency in a man who is nearly 80 years old? I mean, he's retired, he doesn't have urgent emails from a boss, he isn't worried about his social clout on Instagram. What is the phone doing to him?
It is altering his perception of temporal scarcity.
Temporal scarcity.
Yes. The UI of a smartphone is designed to imply that everything is happening right now and everything is extremely urgent. The infinite feed never reaches an end. There is always more to consume.
Right.
The red notification dots, as we mentioned, they mimic the visual cues of environmental danger in nature. When an elderly man interacts with this device, his nervous system registers this constant influx of novel data as a demand for immediate action.
So it manufactures a feeling of being behind, even if you have absolutely nowhere to be.
Exactly. It creates an artificial panic. He starts rushing his meals, not because he has a meeting to attend, but because the device has fundamentally recalibrated his internal metronome to the speed of a fiber optic network.
That is so deeply unsettling. And it isn't just a psychological shift. It manifests physically. Maher reflects on his own mother's experience. He notes that when she initially upgraded from a button phone to a smartphone, her body instantly rejected it.
Our body knew.
She developed chronic, severe headaches. She experienced intense eye pain, and her sleep architecture was completely ruined.
The somatic symptoms of digital strain. We often forget that these devices are essentially high-powered flashlights emitting blue light directly into our retinas.
Which suppresses melatonin production, right? Tricking the brain into thinking it's high noon, completely destroying circadian rhythms.
That's a huge part of the sleep disruption, yes. Furthermore, they force our ocular muscles into a fixed, rigid focal length, usually about 12 to 18 inches from the face for hours on end.
Which isn't natural.
Evolutionarily. Not at all. The human visual system is designed for panoramic scanning, looking out over horizons to spot predators or prey. Forcing the eyes to lock onto a two-dimensional backlit plane induces massive physiological stress, which often translates directly into tension headaches and migraines.
And Maher provides the perfect control group data for this. He mentions that eventually his mother's smartphone died. He phrases it wonderfully. God brought its end.
I love that phrasing.
Once the device was removed from her life, the sleep issues vanished, the headaches disappeared, the physical ailments were entirely device-dependent.
So we see the psychological fracturing in the elderly, the physical toll on the middle-aged, and then Maher pivots to the most alarming observation of all.
The toddlers.
The impact on the developing brain.
He draws this stark contrast between a child raised in a natural, analog environment and a modern, screen-dependent child. He points out that a natural child is inherently mischievous.
Right.
They are playful, they touch things they shouldn't, they run around, they cause a certain amount of manageable chaos, which is normal.
Which, from a developmental psychology standpoint, is absolutely vital. Mischief is how a child maps the physics of the real world. It's how they learn cause and effect, spatial awareness, social boundaries.
But Maher contrasts this healthy chaos with the reaction of a screen-addicted child when the phone is taken away. You don't just get a bored kid, you get a terrifying, violent meltdown.
Tantrums.
Screaming, stomping, flipping objects over.
Because it is indistinguishable from the clinical presentation of chemical withdrawal.
And Maher makes a statement that I really want to highlight for the listener. He says that giving a child a phone just to keep them quiet is a disaster.
Oh.
The silence of a child absorbed in a screen is not peace, it's a problem.
No, it is developmental paralysis.
Let's unpack the reality of that because, I mean, it is so intensely tempting for an exhausted parent. You are out in public, you want to have a quiet dinner, your child is acting up. Handing them the glowing rectangle operates like a magic mute button. Why is that silence so dangerous?
Because the brain is a use-it-or-lose-it organ, especially during the critical windows of neuroplasticity in early childhood. When a child is acting out or causing mischief, they are practicing emotional regulation.
Even when they're misbehaving.
Yes, they are learning how to handle boredom, how to self-soothe, and how to entertain themselves with the physical environment. When you hand them a screen, You outsource that emotional regulation to an algorithm.
You amputate their ability to cope with reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They learn that the solution to any uncomfortable emotion, boredom, frustration, waiting, is instant, hyper-palatable digital stimulation. So when you finally take the device away, they lack the neurological infrastructure to handle normal analog existence.
So the tantrum isn't just anger.
No, it is the sheer panic of a nervous system that has forgotten how to regulate itself.
The generational scope of this is staggering. From the 79-year-old rushing his meals, to the mother with chronic migraines, to the toddler incapable of tolerating reality, it leads Mar into the deepest, most challenging stretch of his experiment. Because as the days turn into weeks, he has to figure out how to actually survive in a society that has optimized itself entirely around the smartphone.
This is where we encounter the immense structural friction of going analog in a digital world.
Right. Around day 10, Mar is forcing himself to readapt to public transportation, which he admits he really dislikes. He's riding the metro in Egypt, and he makes a very conscious analog choice. He tells himself, I am going to embrace the boredom. I am not going to look at my tablet. I am just going to look at people's faces.
A deeply human impulse, right? Seeking connection in the public square.
But the public square is gone. He looks around, and he realizes there are no faces to look at. He says 99% of the people on the metro are staring down at their screens.
It's an incredibly haunting image. An entire train car full of human beings, physically pressed together, but existing in completely distinct, isolated digital realities.
I want to pause and pose a provocative question to you, the listener, right now. What happens to a culture when collective boredom goes extinct? When we completely eliminate those empty, unstructured moments in public spaces? What are we losing?
We lose the default mode network, for starters.
Okay, what is that?
The default mode network, or DMN, is a network of interacting brain regions that becomes highly active when a person is not focused on the outside world. It turns on when you're daydreaming, letting your mind wander, or just staring out the window of a train.
Okay.
It is crucial for creative problem solving, for autobiographical memory consolidation, which is how you make sense of your own life, and for empathy, imagining what other people are thinking or feeling.
So boredom isn't just an empty void, it's a critical processing state.
Yes, boredom is the friction that forces the brain to metabolize the events of the day and synthesize new ideas. When 99% of the population reflexively silences that boredom with a digital feed, we're actively suppressing our own cognitive processing.
We're short-circuiting it.
Furthermore, we eliminate the potential for serendipity. Historically, waiting in line or riding public transit were the crucibles of chance encounters. You strike up a conversation, you notice an architectural detail, you have a spontaneous thought. The smartphone acts as an anesthetic against the discomfort of the public sphere, sure, but it also anesthetizes us against its serendipity.
And while Mar is mourning this lost public space, he is also battling the brutal logistical reality of his Dumbphone.
The friction.
Right. He mentions that the battery lasts 3 to 4 days, which is fantastic, but the sound quality on calls is bizarre and distorted. And then the ultimate modern nightmare happens. The phone simply dies on him.
He's stranded.
Completely stranded. He can't open an app to order a scooter. If he follows his normal analog route, he will be forced onto a highly inconvenient, circuitous metro ride that will waste a massive amount of his day.
So what does he do?
He actually has to find another human being and ask them for help. Ask them to use their smartphone to order him a ride to avoid this terrible route.
It really proves that the world is built for smartphones. Menus are QR codes. Event tickets are digital wallets. Two-factor authentication requires SMS. To opt out of this ecosystem is to accept an immense daily burden of inconvenience.
And this friction brings Mar to his breaking point. Around day 10, the temptation reaches a crescendo. He admits there is a literal voice in his head telling him enough. Go back. This is too hard. Just put the SIM card back in the smartphone.
This is the existential crux of the deep dive. Why shouldn't he go back? If the entire architecture of modern society demands this device and fighting it causes this much friction, why is the friction worth it?
Because Mar makes a profound economic realization about the true cost of convenience. He introduces the concept of the willpower tax.
The willpower tax.
He realizes that if he starts his day on a smartphone and the algorithm feeds him a piece of terrible news or a frustrating comment, his initial daily reservoir of energy is instantly siphoned off.
Before he has even begun to navigate his actual life, his cognitive capacity has been depleted. This aligns perfectly with the psychological concept of ego depletion.
What's that?
It's the idea that willpower and self-control draw upon a limited pool of mental resources. Once you use them up, resisting the urge to reply to a troll or processing bad news, you have less patience for your actual life.
And this leads him to the most powerful conclusion of his entire diary. We always hear that cliche, right? If an app is free, you are the product. They are selling your data.
Everyone says that.
And sure, that's true. But Ma realizes the transaction is far more insidious. He concludes that the destruction of your brain, the obliteration of your focus, and the draining of your attention span, that is the actual price you pay for using these supposedly free apps.
It fundamentally reframes our relationship with the tech industry. The currency you are exchanging for access to Instagram or TikTok is not just your data profile. The currency is your cognitive sovereignty. You are paying with your ability to sit still and read a complex text. You are paying with your patience when your mother asks you a question in the morning. You are paying with your baseline emotional stability.
And the proof is in his professional life. Maher notes that as he pushes past the day 10 temptation, his performance at his job dramatically improves.
He regains that bandwidth.
He handles clients with more grace. He doesn't lose his temper when a project goes sideways. He feels entirely in control of his emotional reactions because his baseline stress isn't artificially maxed out by an algorithmic feed of global outrage.
He has stepped off the treadmill, and as we move into the final third of the experiment, from day 19 to day 30, we witness the sheer compounding magnitude of what a human being could accomplish when they stop bleeding their cognitive resources into a screen.
The output is, frankly, unbelievable. By the end of the 30 days, Maher has completed reading 3 entire books.
3 books.
And he is halfway through 2 more. So he is actively processing 5 books in a single month. On top of that, he finishes over 10 deep educational lectures. He specifically studies fiqh, which is Islamic jurisprudence.
And these aren't short videos.
No, these aren't 5-minute explainer videos. These are dense academic lectures ranging from 1 to 3 hours each. He completes 2 full educational courses and begins a 3rd.
All of this while maintaining his rotational work schedule, navigating his social life, and managing the logistical headaches of the Dumbphone.
I have to speak directly to the listener here because this forced a very uncomfortable mirror on my own life. How many of us routinely claim that we just don't have time to read even 1 book a month?
Most people, I'd say.
How often do we say we'd love to learn a new language or study a new philosophy or take a coding course, but the hours simply don't exist in the day? Yet we will simultaneously average 4 to 5 hours a day staring at our phones.
We suffer from a self-inflicted time poverty.
Self-inflicted. And this brings us to Maher's beautiful philosophical revelation about the nature of time. He points out a glaring paradox. In our daily lives, we actually possess an incredible abundance of time. There are vast stretches of hours available to us, but the overarching span of our life, our total age, our mortality is brutally short.
Yeah.
He quotes a philosophical concept in the video that translates roughly to, "You are but days. When a day goes, a part of you goes, and soon the whole of you will go."
You are but days. It is a stunning articulation of impermanence.
And it fundamentally alters how he values his resources. Maher states explicitly that time is vastly more valuable than money. He says he would gladly pay money if it meant buying back his time.
Which is the precise inverse of the bargain the digital economy offers us.
How so?
The smartphone ecosystem offers us free services in exchange for our time. But more maliciously, it alters our perception of the time we have. When you are caught in the infinite scroll, you feel constantly rushed.
Always behind.
Yes. The device creates an artificial scarcity of time. It makes you feel too busy to read a book while silently digesting 3 hours of your evening.
Artificial scarcity.
Yeah.
And when you shatter that illusion, when you realize the abundance of the hours in front of you, the texture of life completely changes. And there is a tiny, incredibly poignant detail near the very end of his video diary that encapsulates this perfectly. Maher starts talking about how he eats his meals.
The physical manifestation of reclaimed time.
He confesses that for years, he used to eat his food very, very quickly. He was always rushing, always trying to save time during meals, even if he didn't have a specific appointment or somewhere urgent to be.
Because of that internal metronome we talked about.
Right. He was just perpetually infected by a sense of haste. But by the end of the 30 days, without the constant humming anxiety of the digital feed, the urgency evaporates. He realizes there is no rush.
The internal pacemaker has reset.
He just sits down and eats his food slowly. He tastes it.
From a neurophysiological standpoint, this is the ultimate symbol of healing. We discussed the sympathetic nervous system earlier, the fight or flight mode triggered by notifications.
Right.
When you are in that state, your body literally deprioritizes digestion. Blood is routed away from the stomach and toward the muscles. You eat quickly because, biologically speaking, your brain thinks you need to flee a predator.
Oh, wow.
By sitting down and eating slowly, Marr is demonstrating that his parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, has completely returned online. His vagal tone has improved. He isn't just saving time. He is fully inhabiting the present moment.
He's actually experiencing his life rather than just hurrying through it to get back to a screen. And that brings us to the culmination of the source material. The 30 days conclude. He has faced the phantom limbs, the profound loneliness, the logistical breakdowns, and he has emerged on the other side with his working memory and emotional sovereignty intact.
So what is his prescription for the rest of us? Because he does not advocate for complete digital asceticism.
No, and that's what makes his conclusion so resonant. He doesn't demand that his viewers smash their iPhones and retreat to the wilderness. He is incredibly pragmatic.
What's his advice?
His primary advice is to try this for just one day a week, a digital Sabbath. If that is too much, he suggests simply restricting smartphone use to one designated hour a day. Give yourself one specific hour to check on the world and then physically put the device away.
He emphasizes focusing only on the present.
Yeah.
You cannot master the entire year, but you can master the 24 hours currently in your hands.
Exactly. And to distill the core takeaway of Maher's journey, this 30-day experiment wasn't really about a piece of technology. The smartphone is just the anesthetic. The experiment was about confronting the raw reality of being a human being.
And that reality includes friction.
It does. Life contains suffering, it contains fatigue, and it contains the immense heavy boredom of sitting on a metro train with nothing to do. But it also contains the deep satisfaction of finishing a complex book, the joy of a calm morning with your mother, and a profound sensory beauty that deserves to be genuinely lived rather than frantically scrolled past while you're half awake in bed.
We use these devices to eliminate the friction from our lives. They make communication instant, information immediate, and entertainment endless. But the friction is the point.
The friction is the point.
The waiting for a ride, the effort required to decipher a dense text, the awkwardness of navigating a public space, the simple, slow act of chewing your food, the friction is the very texture of human existence.
And that brings us to the final, provocative thought we want to leave you with today. We have explored the massive cognitive and emotional tax levied by these devices. So we ask you, if the destruction of your deep focus, the artificial scarcity of your time, and the hijacking of your nervous system is the true price of these platforms, what specific part of your humanity are you currently paying a free app to take away?
Are you paying with your serendipity? Your ability to sit quietly and let a thought finish forming in your own mind? Are you paying with your child's ability to tolerate the real world?
Or are you paying with your very perception of time? Remember the image we started with. The addiction isn't just an app on a screen. It's the way your hand instinctively blindly searches the bed sheets the second your eyes open, desperate for the syringe.
It is the surrender of the morning.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope this exploration gives you the tools to interrogate your own digital baseline.
And perhaps, tonight, consider leaving the device in another room when you go to sleep. Force the friction. See what your brain does when the trap doesn't snap shut tomorrow morning.
See if you can master the first 24 hours. Until next time, take care and take back your time.